Most people go through life believing they're reacting to reality. A comment someone makes, a result they didn't expect, a situation they didn't plan for. But here's the truth. You were never taught in school. You're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to the meaning your mind creates about reality. And that difference changes everything. Because life is unpredictable. Markets shift, people change, plans fall apart, and the world moves faster than your nervous system can sometimes process. If your peace depends on what happens out there, you'll always be thrown off balance by something you can't control. But if your power comes from what happens inside your mind, suddenly you become unshakable. Right now, more than ever, people are overwhelmed, not because the world got harder, but because their internal world is running on autopilot. Old fears, outdated beliefs, unconscious filters, built from years of past experience. And if you don't take charge of that internal world, it will run your life for you. This presupposition is the line in the sand. You are in charge of your mind, and therefore you are in charge of your results. Imagine what becomes possible when your emotions, your interpretations, and your actions stop being dictated by external chaos and start by being directed by conscious choice. If you master this, you stop reacting, you start responding, and your entire life changes. So let's dive in. A few weeks ago, I was talking with a senior leader. Let's call her Maya. She runs a division of over 300 people, and she's known for her calm presence. One morning, she walked into the office and learned about a major client that had abruptly pulled out of a contract. No warning, no explanation. Just a short message from their legal team saying they needed to pause the relationship. Well, her team panicked. Phones were buzzing, people were whispering, Slack was blowing up with theories and fears. But Maya didn't jump to conclusions. She didn't assume the worst. She didn't personalize it. She didn't let her mind run wild with stories. She took a breath, centered herself, and she asked one question. What do I know for sure? Then she asked a second. What meaning am I adding on top of that? All she knew was the client paused. Everything else, the fears, the assumptions, the imagined consequences, were interpretation, not facts. So instead of reacting from panic, she responded from clarity. She gathered her leadership team, laid out what they actually knew, assigned measured next steps, and reached out to the client without emotions clouding the message. Later that afternoon, the client replied. The issue had nothing to do with performance or dissatisfaction. They were restructuring internally and needed time to review budgets. Crisis avoided, stability restored. Not because the situation was easy, but because she managed her mind before managing the moment. Leaders like Maya don't control the world, they control the meaning they give the world. And that's what makes them steady when everyone else is spiraling. You see, you don't experience reality, you experience your interpretation of it. This entire supposition comes from studying how successful people think. When you look at high performers, leaders, entrepreneurs, creators, anyone who consistently produces results, they all share one uncommon habit. They take responsibility for their internal world. Even when the external world is unpredictable. They know they can't control markets, competitors, employees, clients, or circumstances, but they can control the meaning they give those circumstances. And that single shift is what keeps them resourceful, creative, and effective under pressure. That's the foundation of this presupposition. You are in charge of your mind, therefore you are in charge of your results. So let's break it down, what this really means. Every second, your brain is filtering the world through your beliefs, memories, habits, expectations, emotions, identity, even the language you speak. You never respond to the raw event itself. You respond to the version your mind creates. Two people can sit in the same meeting, hear the same comment, and one feels inspired and the other feels threatened. It's not the moment that's different. It's their interpretation. Let's take a simple message. We need to talk. One person spirals. One person gets irritated. One stays neutral. One feels excited for a new opportunity. Same message, 4 different worlds internally. And here's the key. Most people assume their reaction is automatic, or just how they are, or dictated by the situation. It's not. Your mind assigned a meaning, and your emotions, physiology, and behavior followed that meaning. This is where most leaders, even successful ones, get stuck. Not because of the situation, but because of the story their mind tells about it. Once you understand that your interpretation is the driver, everything becomes changeable. So let's look at cause and effect, because that's where real empowerment lives. One of the clearest principles in NLP is the distinction between living at cause and living at effect. And this difference quietly determines the quality of your life, your leadership, and your results. Most people spend their entire lives on the effect side. Their mood depends on what happened that morning. Their confidence depends on what others say. Their stress level depends on factors they can't influence. Markets, traffic, timelines, other people's choices. When you live in effect, it feels like life is happening to you. You're constantly managing fires, reacting emotionally, and trying to control external chaos that was never in your control to begin with. But NLP offers a different lens, the lens of cause. Living at cause doesn't mean controlling the world. It means controlling the mind that interprets the world. There will always be things outside your influence: the weather, economic shifts, organizational politics, unexpected decisions, someone else's attitude or behavior. But you can control your thoughts, your internal dialogue, and your emotional state, your physiology, and the meaning you give a situation, the response you choose in the next moment. And the ability to choose your response is one of the most underrated human powers. This is where high performers distinguish themselves. They don't collapse when things go wrong. They consciously choose the meaning, the mindset, and the state they want to operate from. Empowerment isn't the absence of obstacles, it's the presence of inner choice. When you shift from reacting to responding, from assuming to observing, and from automatic meaning making to conscious interpretation, you move from being a passenger in your own life to sitting in the driver's seat. And here's the payoff. The moment you take charge of your internal world, your external results become movable again. That shift from effect to cause is where your clarity returns, your creativity activates, and your best decisions come from. And ultimately, that's where your results are created. This isn't about perfection, it's about choice. And choice is where real power lives. Let's talk about how your response creates your results. So, once you understand that you don't react to the world, you react to your interpretation of it, the next steps become incredibly clear. Your interpretation creates your state drives your behavior produces your results. This is the chain that determines everything. Most people try to change their results by pushing harder, working more, or forcing different actions. But behavior is the third step in the sequence. By the time you get to behavior, the outcome has already been shaped by what came before it. Let's break it down. When something happens, your mind instantly assigns meaning. That meaning generates a state, whether it be calm, overwhelmed, frustrated, focused, threatened, energized, curious. Your state then dictates the quality of your actions. You already know this from experience. When you're stressed, your decisions shrink. When you're confident, your creativity expands. When you're grounded, you lead better conversations, solve problems faster, and see what options others miss. When you're reactive, you speak too quickly, judge too early, or retreat too soon. States determine behavior, and behavior determines results. So if you want new outcomes, better performance, better leadership, better relationships, better momentum, you don't start with the outcome. You start with the state that produces it. This is why two leaders can face the exact same situation, and one collapses under pressure while the other rises and responds with clarity. They're not different because of the situation, they're different because of the state they enter the situation with. And the beautiful part, state is changeable. Interpretation is flexible. Meaning is adjustable, which means your results are not fixed, they're movable. If you change the internal pattern, the external outcome follows. So let's look at some real life applications. It's one thing to understand the concept. It's another to see how it plays out in the moments that actually matter. The moments where your old patterns try to take over. Imagine this, a major project hits a delay. Timeline shift, people are waiting, and suddenly all eyes are on you. And in the past, maybe this would have triggered stress or frustration. You might have tightened up, rushed into decisions, or started mentally blaming yourself or others. Not because you're weak, but because the meaning your mind created was, this is bad, this is urgent, this is my fault. But with this presupposition in mind, the moment hits differently. Instead of spiraling, you pause. You take a slow, conscious breath and you ask yourself, what else could this mean? Maybe the delay opens space for improvement. Maybe alignment is needed. Maybe the timing simply wasn't right. That single shift in your interpretation moves you into a calmer state. And from that state, you lead with clarity and decisiveness. Now, picture a teammate snapping at you in a moment of stress. Before, it might have felt personal. You would have reacted almost instantly, escalating the tension. But now, you recognize the filter your mind wants to use. Maybe thinking that they're trying to disrespect you, and you challenge it. So you breathe, you respond with intention. And instead of conflict, the moment becomes an opportunity to build trust. Now imagine the market dips or a client suddenly postpones. Old pattern, panic, tightening, worst case thinking. Empowered pattern, pause, regulate, ask better questions, move strategically. You respond from clarity, not fear. In each of these situations, the power wasn't in the event. It was in the meaning you chose and the state you stepped into. So let's look at some NLP tools that you can use daily. This presupposition isn't just a mindset shift, it's a skill. And like any skill, you can train it. In NLP, we work directly with the subconscious mind because that's where your emotional patterns, meanings, and automatic reactions are stored. So when I talk about taking charge of your mind, I'm not asking you to think positive or force willpower. I'm talking about using tools that actually change the internal patterns, driving your state and your behavior. Let me walk you through two of the most powerful tools I use with clients every day. First off, mental and emotional release, shortened for MER, is one of the fastest ways to remove the emotional baggage that keeps you stuck on the affect side of life. Reactions, triggers, old stories, and automatic stress responses. When you release anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and limiting beliefs at the unconscious level, something incredible happens. Your mind becomes flexible again. You stop reacting from the weight of your past. You stop carrying that emotional tension into new situations. And from the first time in a long time, you get to choose your state instead of having the state chosen for you. This flexibility is what gives you real choice and real power. Another tool I use, and one of the foundations of NLP, is modeling. It's the simple but profound ideas that if someone else can overcome a pattern, a breakthrough, a limitation, or achieve a certain level of emotional control, then you can. Your mind runs. Patterns can be learned, replicated, refined, and installed. When you study how someone gets a result, their mindset, their language, their physiology, their state, you can adopt that pattern for yourself, because every result you want starts with the way you run your mind. And when you train these tools consistently, your internal world becomes the most stable, powerful part of your life. Let's think back to Maya, the leader who stayed centered when everyone around her was spiraling. She didn't change the client's decision. She didn't control the external situation. She didn't force the world to cooperate. She simply mastered the meaning in her mind, and that created in the moment. And because she did, she kept her state, she kept her clarity, and she led from cause instead of effect. So let me ask you this. What if empowerment was never about controlling life, but about mastering the mind that interprets it? The real difference between chaos and clarity wasn't the size of the problem, but the state you bring into it. What if every difficult moment, every unexpected shift, every emotionally charged interaction was actually an invitation to pause, breathe, and choose a more empowering interpretation? Imagine how your leadership would evolve if you did what Maya did. Not once, but consistently. What if the next time pressure hits, you don't collapse into old patterns? You expand into new possibilities. What if the next tough conversation becomes a chance to deepen trust? What if the next setback becomes a moment of strategic insight? What if the next disruption becomes the catalyst for growth instead of stress? And here's the biggest what if of all. What if your results changed the moment you changed the meaning? Because when you shift from interpretation, you shift your state. When you shift your state, you change your behavior. And when you change your behavior, your results follow. Every time. Your external world becomes easier to lead when your internal world becomes easier to navigate. So when you're in charge of your mind, you're in charge of your results. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger, clearer, and more intentional. If you're ready to continue this journey and bring true empowerment into your daily life, click on the next video and let's keep growing together.